The first time I saw Logan Mercer again. He was sitting across a glass conference table, nervously adjusting his tie, waiting for me to walk in and decide whether he would get the job. But that part of the story comes later. Because before the office building, before the interview, before the quiet satisfaction of watching recognition spread across his face, there was a receipt. A thin, crumpled receipt that lived in my wallet for exactly 1 year, 2 days, and 7 hours. And every time I almost threw it away. I remembered what he said. "Sweetheart, you're not even worth a $20 dinner." It was Friday, November 3rd, 2023. 8:12 p.m. Chicago, Illinois. The kind of November night where wind slips between buildings like it has somewhere important to be. Downtown Chicago shimmered with early holiday lights, storefront windows glowing gold against sidewalks slick with recent rain. Yellow taxis blurred past in reflections, and somewhere down the block, a saxophone player turned cold air into music. I stood outside Marlowe Street kitchen, rubbing my hands together for warmth and checking my phone for the 5th time. Logan, running 5 minutes late, babe. Sent 14 minutes ago. I smiled anyway. Because back then, loving someone meant giving them the benefit of every doubt they offered. My name is Sienna Carter. I was 25 years old that night. I lived in a 3rd-floor walk-up apartment in Lincoln Park, with radiators that hissed like they were holding grudges and kitchen cabinets that only closed if you lifted them slightly first. I worked as a customer experience associate at a logistics software company called Gridline Freight Solutions. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent. And sometimes, that's enough. Logan Mercer did not belong to sometimes enough. He was 27, senior financial analyst at Keller Roth Investments. North Shore upbringing, private school, Northwestern finance degree. Logan owned 3 watches that cost more than my car. He talked about markets the way chefs talk about food, passionately, confidently, assuming everyone else understood the language. We met on August 18th, 2023, at a rooftop birthday party where I accidentally spilled tonic water on his sleeve. Instead of getting annoyed, he laughed. "Well," he said, grinning, "that's one way to get my attention." He called me darling by the end of the night. I should have known then. Pet names used to, early usually mean exit plans exist too. The restaurant door opened behind me. Warmth spilled onto the sidewalk, along with garlic and butter. "There you are." Logan's voice wrapped around me before his arms did. He kissed my cheek. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." 3 words that felt like home back then. Inside, Marlowe Street kitchen buzzed with Friday energy, wine glasses clinking, servers weaving through tables, laughter layered over indie music. We were seated by the window. Rain dotted the glass like Morse code. Dinner started easily. Logan talked about a deal closing Monday. I talked about a difficult client who kept calling me "young lady" instead of my name. He smiled, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. That was becoming a pattern. Halfway through dinner, Logan checked his phone twice. By dessert, he checked it 4 times. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. "Yeah, babe, just work stuff." But his tone carried impatience. Not urgency. Impatience. The difference matters. At 9:04 p.m., the server placed the bill on the table. Total, $18.40. 2 burgers. 1 shared fries. Tap water. Logan stared at the receipt. Longer than necessary. Then he laughed quietly. "What?" I asked. He slid the receipt toward me. "You ever think about where you're headed, Sienna?" My stomach tightened. "Sometimes. I mean long-term." The air shifted. Restaurant noise faded into background static. "I'm building something," he continued. "Career network investments." I nodded slowly. "That's good. And you're comfortable." Comfortable. The word landed heavier than criticism. I work hard, I said. I know, he smiled gently. You're sweet. Sweet. Another word people use when they don't mean impressive. I just don't think we're aligned. There it was. Clean. Polite. Final. My fingers curled under the table. Aligned how? Logan tapped the receipt again. I can't keep pretending this is enough for me. Enough. A lifetime of quiet insecurities stirred awake. I'm not asking you to pretend. I know, darling, that's the problem. Silence stretched between us like pulled thread. Then he said it. Softly. Casually. Cruelly. You're not even worth a $20 dinner emotionally. No anger. No raised voice. Just evaluation. Like a spreadsheet cell turning red. Logan stood. Left a $20 bill beside the receipt. I hope you understand. He kissed the top of my head. The way you comfort someone you're leaving behind. And walked out. I didn't cry immediately. Shock is quiet. It hums instead. I sat there watching condensation slide down my water glass, while conversations continued around me like nothing had happened. The server approached carefully. You okay, honey? I nodded. Paid the extra $1.60 with my card. Folded the receipt. Put it in my wallet. Not as evidence. Not as revenge. Just because throwing it away felt like admitting he was right. At 9:37 p.m., I stepped onto Clark Street. Wind hit my face hard enough to make my eyes water. Or maybe that was something else. I walked 3 blocks before stopping under a streetlight. Pulled out my wallet. Looked at the receipt again. $18.40. Such a small number. Such a large wound. Cars passed. Strangers laughed. Life continued. And standing there, shivering in a coat that wasn't warm enough, I made a promise to myself. Not that I'd prove him wrong. Not that I'd succeed. Just that I would never again sit across from someone who measured my worth in cost. What I didn't know was that exactly 371 days later, Logan Mercer would sit across from me again. But this time, I'd be the one deciding value. The morning after Logan Mercer walked out of that restaurant, I woke up before my alarm. 5:42 a.m. Saturday, November 4th, 2023. Chicago, Illinois. For a few seconds, I didn't remember why my chest felt heavy. Then I saw the dress draped over my chair. My purse on the floor. My wallet half open. And the memory returned like cold water. Sweetheart, you're not even worth a $20 dinner. I stared at the ceiling while my radiator hissed beside the window. There's a specific kind of heartbreak that doesn't explode. It reorganizes. Quietly. You don't cry loudly. You don't throw things. You just lie there realizing someone saw your entire life and decided it wasn't impressive enough. That was the feeling. My apartment was 410 square feet of carefully negotiated space. 3rd floor. No elevator. Windows that rattled when buses passed. The kitchen was technically a hallway with a stove. The bathroom mirror leaned slightly left, making reflections look like they were unsure of themselves. But it was mine. Every dish, every plant, every crooked picture frame had been chosen by me. And that morning, standing barefoot on cold linoleum, I made coffee and realized something uncomfortable. Logan hadn't just rejected me. He'd confirmed a fear I'd carried quietly for years. That I was average. At 7:18 a.m., my phone buzzed. Mom. Morning, sweetheart. How was dinner? I stared at the message for a long time. My mother, Janice Carter, believed in 2 things deeply. Libraries could solve most problems. People were generally kind. I didn't want to disturb either belief. But I also couldn't lie. We broke up. Her reply came instantly. Oh, honey, I'm sorry, did he hurt you? I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Just disappointed. 3 dots appeared. Come home this weekend. I'll make pancakes. That was my mom's solution to emotional collapse. Pancakes. And honestly, it worked more often than therapy. November 6th, 2023. 8:57 a.m. Gridline Freight Solutions occupied the 14th floor of a beige office building that smelled permanently like carpet cleaner and burnt popcorn. I slid into my cubicle, booted up my computer, and prepared to resume being someone Logan Mercer would never date. Customer emails. Support tickets. Spreadsheet updates. Routine is merciful. It gives grief somewhere to sit. At 10:12 a.m., my manager leaned over my cubicle wall. Marcus Feldman. Mid-40s. Permanent coffee mug. Kind eyes hidden behind stress. Morning, Sienna. Morning. You got a minute? His tone held curiosity, not urgency. I followed him to a small conference room. He closed the door. I've been reviewing last quarter feedback, he said, sliding a printed sheet toward me. Clients consistently mention you by name. I blinked. They do. Marcus nodded. You solve problems nobody else notices. No one had ever complimented my noticing before. Most people called it overthinking. I wanted to ask, he continued, have you considered moving into product operations? The words hung in the air like an open door. I don't have that background. You have instincts. Background can be learned. Something inside me shifted slightly. A tiny crack of possibility. Think about it, Marcus said gently. That evening, riding the 22 Clark bus home, Chicago blurred past in streaks of headlights and reflections. People talked. Music leaked from headphones. Someone argued softly on the phone. Normal life. But my brain replayed Marcus's sentence. Background can be learned. For years, I'd treated my career like a waiting room. Something temporary. Something that would improve once the real opportunity arrived. But what if opportunity wasn't arriving? What if it needed building? That night at 11:03 p.m., I opened my wallet. Pulled out the receipt. $18.40. I placed it on my desk beside my laptop. Not as punishment. As direction. Then I opened YouTube. Typed. Product operations basics. The first video loaded. A woman with confident energy explained workflows, user journeys, backlog prioritization. I understood maybe 30%. But curiosity outweighed confusion. I watched another video. Then another. At 1:17 a.m., exhausted but wired, I closed my laptop. For the first time since Friday night. I felt movement. Winter arrived fast in Chicago. By December 9th, snow lined sidewalks like unfinished sentences. Holiday lights appeared on balconies. Coffee cups multiplied in my sink. My routine became predictable. Work. Dinner. Online learning. Notes. Sleep. Repeat. Nobody noticed. No dramatic montage. No inspirational music. Just consistency. The most underrated form of transformation. Christmas Eve. December 24th, 2023. Worcester, Massachusetts. My parents' house smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. Dad watched football. Mom hummed while wrapping gifts. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Mom glanced over. Working on Christmas Eve, sweetheart. Learning. She smiled. That counts too. Later that night, while washing dishes, Dad nudged me gently. You okay about that boy? I shrugged. He made room. Dad nodded like that answer made sense. Because sometimes, Older people understand quiet healing better than loud explanations. January, the mentor appears. January 16th, 2024. 2:34 p.m. A company-wide Zoom meeting introduced a new senior operations consultant. Danielle Brooks. Confident voice. Measured words. The kind of presence that makes rooms recalibrate. She spoke about process clarity like it was art. I filled 2 notebook pages. After the meeting, I did something unusual. I emailed her. Short. Respectful. Honest. Hi, Danielle. Your presentation clarified several concepts I've been studying independently. If you ever offer shadowing opportunities, I'd be grateful to learn. I hovered over send. Imposter syndrome whispered loudly. Then I remembered a restaurant table, a receipt, and pressed send. Her reply came 47 minutes later. Hi, Sienna. Curiosity is my favorite qualification. Let's talk Thursday. I stared at the email. Heartbeat quickening. Doors don't always open dramatically. Sometimes they just unlock. And that was the beginning of the year no one saw. The year Logan Mercer never witnessed. The year a quiet girl stopped waiting to be impressive and started becoming undeniable. But growth isn't linear. And just when my confidence began to stabilize, life reminded me that healing and heartbreak can coexist. By February, I had stopped checking Logan Mercer's social media. Not because I was fully healed, but because curiosity had started feeling like self-harm. Still, moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It just means remembering without reopening the wound every time. Thursday, February 8th, 2024. 6:03 p.m. Gridline Freight Solutions, Conference Room B. The first time I spoke to Danielle Brooks one-on-one, I almost canceled. Imposter syndrome had spent the entire day rehearsing exit strategies. You're bothering her. You're not qualified. She'll realize you're just support staff, pretending to understand operations. But at 5:58 p.m., I closed my laptop, walked down the hallway, and entered Conference Room B. Danielle was already there. Laptop open. Glasses resting low on her nose. Energy calm but alert. She smiled. Sienna Carter. Yeah. Sit, tell me what you're curious about. Not tell me your credentials. Not tell me your experience. Curiosity. I exhaled. For the next 42 minutes, Danielle asked questions nobody had ever asked me professionally. What patterns do you notice in client complaints? If you could fix one process tomorrow, what would it be? What frustrates you about your role? She listened. Actually listened. At one point, she leaned back and said something that stayed with me for months. You think like a systems person. I blinked. I do. You connect cause and effect quickly. That's teachable talent. Teachable. Not innate brilliance. Not genius. Just potential plus effort. That felt achievable. At 6:49 p.m., Danielle closed her laptop. I'm starting a small internal workflow audit project next month. No title, no raise, just learning. My stomach fluttered. Would you want to help? Yes. Too fast. Too eager. But also honest. She laughed softly. Good, we start March 1st. That winter, Chicago nights became thinking space. After study sessions, I'd walk along Lincoln Avenue, wrapped in scarves that never felt warm enough. Streetlights reflected on wet pavement. Restaurants buzzed. Strangers lived entire lives I'd never know. And somewhere between those walks, something subtle happened. Logan Mercer stopped being the main character of my heartbreak. He became background context. Important once. Not central anymore. The workflow audit project lived in a quiet corner of the office. 3 people. Danielle. A data analyst named Victor. And me. No announcements. No recognition. Just spreadsheets, sticky notes, and whiteboards full of arrows. The work fascinated me. Every process felt like a puzzle missing pieces. And every time I identified one, Danielle would nod. Good catch. 2 words. But validation accumulates. Like compound interest, March 18th, 2024. 10:11 p.m. I was updating notes when my phone buzzed. LinkedIn notification. Logan Mercer viewed your profile. My chest tightened instantly. Muscle memory. I stared at the notification for a long time. Did he search me? Was it accidental? Did it matter? Curiosity whispered. I opened the app. His profile appeared unchanged. Confident headshot. Finance buzzwords. Promotion announcement from January. I hovered over his name. Old photos surfaced in memory. His laugh. His hand on my back. That restaurant. Then another memory replaced them. Conference room B. Danielle saying Teachable. I locked my phone. Didn't view his profile. Didn't message. Didn't react. Sometimes healing is simply choosing not to re-enter rooms you've already left. By April, my daily routine looked different. Morning, support role. Afternoon, workflow project. Evenings, learning. Sleep became optional. But energy felt purposeful. One afternoon, Marcus stopped by my desk. You look busy. I am. He smiled. That's a good sign. Then he added quietly. I'm proud of you. The words surprised me more than Logan's breakup had months earlier. Because praise from people who see your effort hits deeper than criticism from those who didn't. May 12th, 2024. 8:47 p.m. Mom answered on the second ring. Hi, sweetheart. Happy Mother's Day. We talked about everything ordinary. Weather. Dad's garden. Her new library volunteer. Then she paused. You sound different. I smiled. Different how? Lighter. I stared out my window at Chicago's skyline lights blinking steadily. I think I stopped waiting. For what? For someone to decide I'm enough. Silence. Soft and warm. That's my girl, Mom said. June 27th, 2024. 4:12 p.m. Danielle called me into her office. She rarely used that room. Which meant something mattered. She handed me a printed document. Internal job posting. Associate Operations Coordinator. My heart pounded. You should apply, she said. I don't know if I'm ready. Danielle tilted her head. Readiness is often confidence disguised as timing. I laughed nervously. What if I don't get it? Then you learn how to interview. Simple. Practical. Fear shrank slightly. That night, I placed the receipt beside my laptop again. $18.40. The number felt smaller now. Almost symbolic. I opened a blank document. Started typing my resume. And somewhere between bullet points and formatting, I realized something unexpected. If Logan Mercer walked back into my life right now, he wouldn't recognize this version of me. Not because I'd changed dramatically, but because I'd started valuing myself quietly. And quiet value is invisible to people who only notice price tags, but life has a strange sense of timing. Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, 8:12 a.m. Halbrook Dynamics headquarters, Chicago. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. Not because of the height, not because of the silence, but because downstairs, in conference room B, the past was sitting in a navy suit holding a resume. And in 12 minutes, I was walking in to interview him. I stood in front of my office window, staring down at the glass streets of downtown Chicago. The morning sun bounced off skyscrapers like polished mirrors. Traffic crawled, people rushed, coffee cups in hand, lives moving forward. Mine had. But apparently, some people's timelines liked to circle back. "Morning," Jordan said, stepping into my doorway with his tablet. "Candidate is here early." I didn't turn around. "Of course he is." Jordan hesitated. "You want me to run point on this one?" I smiled faintly. "No, I need to do this myself." He didn't ask why. Jordan had been there through the nights I stayed late rebuilding projections from scratch, through the promotion announcement, through the quiet moments when I'd stare at nothing and he knew I wasn't thinking about spreadsheets. He simply nodded. "Well, he looks nervous." That made me turn. "Nervous?" Jordan shrugged. Hands shaking, asked where the restroom was twice. A slow breath filled my lungs. "Good." 8:21 a.m. I opened the candidate file again. Name, his name unchanged. Previous role, account executive, regional firm. Gap, 4 months. Salary expectation, modest. And at the top of the internal note, Jordan had written, strong experience, confident communicator, slightly overprepared. Overprepared. I almost laughed. He'd always been good at pretending confidence. Until the moment someone asked for depth. 8:24 a.m. I walked past conference room B once. Through the glass wall, I saw him. Straight posture, resume folder clutch like armor, foot tapping. Older. Tired. Smaller than I remembered. It's funny how memory inflates people who once had emotional authority over you. Reality corrects that. I kept walking. Not yet. 8:27 a.m. Flashback hit without warning. That restaurant. Cheap overhead lighting. Plastic menu corners. His voice across the table. "You're not worth $20. I remembered the burn behind my eyes. The way I'd smiled so strangers wouldn't see. The weight of swallowing words, because arguing with someone who's already decided your value is pointless. My heels clicked against marble floors as I walked back toward the conference room. This time, I didn't walk past. 8:30 a.m. I opened the door. Conversation inside stopped immediately. Jordan and HR manager Melissa sat across from him. He looked up, and for one suspended second, time folded. Recognition flashed across his face like lightning hitting glass. Confusion. Disbelief. Then panic. I closed the door softly behind me. "Good morning," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Melissa blinked between us. "You two know each other." Silence stretched. His mouth opened. Closed. I saved him. "We used to," I said calmly, "years ago." Melissa nodded, unaware of the emotional earthquake under the table. Well, perfect icebreaker. If only she knew. Jordan slid me the evaluation sheet. I didn't look at it. Instead, I looked at him. Really looked. The man who once measured my worth against dinner prices now sat applying for a salary bracket he hadn't imagined I'd occupy. Life has a quiet sense of humor. Melissa began. "So tell us what drew you to Halbrook Dynamics." His voice wavered at first, then steadied. Growth opportunities, market leadership, culture alignment. Prepared answers. But his eyes kept flicking toward me. Searching. Calculating. Remembering. 20 minutes passed. Questions. Metrics. Campaign strategy. Leadership scenarios. He performed well. Better than I expected. Because people grow. Even the ones who hurt you. That realization didn't erase anything. But it complicated revenge. Finally, Melissa leaned back. That covers most of my questions. Jordan nodded. Then all eyes turned to me. The final interviewer. The decision weighed. I folded my hands on the table and asked quietly, "What would you say is the biggest professional mistake you've made?" His breath caught, because he knew. That wasn't a resume question. That was a mirror. Silence stretched long enough for air to thicken. Finally, he spoke. I underestimated people. Simple, honest, unexpected. I tilted my head. In what way? He swallowed. I judged potential based on where someone was, not where they were going. Melissa scribbled notes, thinking this was generic leadership reflection. It was. This was confession disguised as corporate language. I nodded slowly. Thank you. The interview concluded minutes later. Handshakes. Polite smiles. Melissa walked him out. Jordan lingered. Well, I stared at the empty chair across from me. The ghost of old power dynamics sat there. Broken. Neutralized. Redefined. Technically, I said, he's qualified. Jordan crossed his arms. And personally, I exhaled. That's complicated. Jordan smirked. Good thing we hire professionally. 9:18 a.m. Back in my office, I sat alone. Chicago skyline, coffee cooling, thoughts louder than traffic below. I had imagined this moment so many times. A dramatic takedown. A speech. Humiliation. But reality rarely performs for your fantasies. Instead, it hands you something harder. Choice. Not revenge. Power. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it. Then answered. Hello. A familiar voice. Soft. Careful. Hey, sweetheart. The word hit like nostalgia dipped in salt. I know this isn't appropriate, he said, but can we talk? I leaned back in my chair, watching clouds drift between buildings. The story wasn't over. Not even close. Because sometimes the real confrontation doesn't happen in interview rooms. It happens in conversations where both people finally understand what they were to each other. And what they aren't anymore. Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, 12:47 p.m. Chicago Riverwalk. The sky above Chicago had turned that soft September blue, the kind that looks peaceful but carries the promise of cold just weeks away. I stood near the railing overlooking the river, watching tour boats glide under steel bridges. Behind me, footsteps slowed. I didn't turn. You picked the same spot, he said quietly. I smiled faintly. You remember? Of course I do. Because this was where we used to sit after classes, where cheap takeout tasted better because it was shared, where conversations felt like they had futures inside them. Funny how places don't change. People do. He stopped beside me, leaving just enough space to be respectful. Not enough to feel close. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted. I wasn't either. Honesty felt lighter now. No performance. No pretending. Just two versions of ourselves, meeting after time had done its work. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city filled the silence for us, water slapping concrete, distant horns, laughter from tourists. Finally, he exhaled. I owe you an apology. I didn't react. Because apologies aren't rare. Meaningful ones are. I was insecure, he said. Back then, I felt like I needed to be ahead of everyone, and when I was, I took it out on you. The memory flickered. That plastic menu. That sentence. You're not worth $20. He stared at the river. I thought success meant choosing someone who already looked successful, someone who made me look better. His voice cracked slightly. And I confused ambition with cruelty. I turned to face him. This wasn't the boy from college. Regret ages people differently than time. "What made you call today?" I asked. He laughed softly. "Seeing you walk into that room." A pause. "You were always capable. I just didn't want to admit it." That sentence landed harder than the insult ever had. Because recognition after loss carries weight. "You know," I said, "I used to replay that night in my head." His shoulders tightened. I'd think of smarter things to say, stronger things, comebacks. I smiled. But silence turned out to be better. He looked confused. "Why?" "Because it gave me time to build a life where I didn't need to prove anything to you." The wind lifted strands of my hair across my face. I didn't move them. I wanted the moment raw. He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." A few seconds passed. Then the question neither of us had voiced all day slipped out. "Are you going to hire me?" Direct. Vulnerable. Human. I leaned against the railing. "That depends." He swallowed. "On what?" I held his gaze. "Why you want the job?" He blinked. "I told you in the interview." That was the corporate answer. Silence. Then he said quietly, "Because I need a fresh start. Not flashy. Not strategic. Real." I nodded. That's honest. The river moved beneath us, indifferent to human turning points. "I won't hire you because I pity you," I said. "I wouldn't want that." "I know." A breath. "I also won't reject you because of our past." Relief flickered across his face before he could hide it. "Because revenge isn't nearly as satisfying as peace." His voice dropped. "You always were stronger than me." I shook my head. "No, I just kept going longer." And that was the truth most people misunderstand. Strength isn't dramatic. It's repetitive. Quiet. Boring. Daily. We stood there until the sun shifted enough to paint the water gold. Finally, he spoke again. "For what it's worth, you were never a charity case." I smiled gently. "I know." Because confidence that comes years later doesn't need validation from old voices. Still, hearing it felt like closing a door I'd left cracked for too long. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too." He hesitated, then walked away. No dramatic hug. No lingering glance. Just footsteps fading into the rhythm of a city full of parallel lives. And somehow, that felt perfect. Friday, September 20th, 2024, 9:02 a.m. Halbrook Dynamics, Executive Office. Melissa sat across from me with the hearing report. "So," she said, tapping her pen, "decision." I read the evaluation again. Qualified. Coachability potential. Strong client instincts. I signed the approval. Melissa smiled. "Good choice. Maybe. Maybe not. But it was a fair one. And fairness is a luxury revenge rarely allows." Monday, October 7th, 2024, 8:55 a.m. His first day. I watched from my office window as he walked through the lobby. Nervous. Focused. Starting over. Not as someone above me. Not as someone below me. Just another professional building something. The way we all are. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. City lights blinking awake. Laptop closed. Phone silent. And for the first time in years, that memory from the restaurant didn't sting. It felt like a prologue. Necessary. Uncomfortable. But ultimately small compared to the story that followed. Success didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like freedom. Freedom from proving. Freedom from replaying. Freedom from carrying people who once underestimated you. So that was the story. My ex once told me I wasn't worth a $20 dinner. A year later, he sat across from me asking for a chance. And I realized something important. The most powerful response to disrespect isn't proving someone wrong. It's becoming someone who no longer needs their approval. If you watched till here, tell me in the comment section, did I make the right decision? Would you have hired him? Or would you have walked away completely? I read every single comment. And if this story meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that your worth is never defined by someone else's temporary opinion. I'll see you in the next story.